Hello, sirs, and welcome to Imperfect Politics. Lots happened in the past week in CPAC, so let's get going on it.
Here we are gathered to present a common sense plan to protect the freedom and security of Canadians in these times. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, Canada is a more dangerous place. Hate crimes are up 150% after his economy has caused more desperation. His divisive, censorial policies have turned Canadian against Canadian, and his weak laws have allowed criminal.
I think they're Canadian against Canadian. He's mainly going back to the Freedom Convoy, which, if you go back through those videos, you can definitely see a lot of those things and the rhetoric that Trudeau picked. Yeah, not the most polite.
The October 7th attacks in Israel. It coordinates with other groups like Hezbollah, which are criminalized in Canada. According to a recent Global News report, there are 700 regime and IRGC agents operating with impunity, using stolen money, terrorizing our Persian and Jewish populations, and putting Canadians at risk on our soil. I will add, this group fired a missile at a civilian aircraft, killing over 100 Canadians. This was almost 4 years ago. Can you imagine what kind of prime minister would allow a terrorist group to fire a missile at killing our people, and 4 years later he lets them legally operate in our country with impunity? This is a disgrace, and it is time that Justin Trudeau stood up to defend our people against these IRGC murderers by banning them today. And we should work to kick out every single regime agent that is operating in this country, of which 700 have been identified. Second, we need to establish a foreign influence registry, something the government promised it would do back in June. We have multiple Beijing-controlled police stations harassing the Chinese population in Canada. We have, as I said, 700 Iranian regime agents harassing Persian and Jewish Canadians, and countless others may be operating as well. We want a foreign agent registry, which requires that the government, that anyone who works for a foreign.
Now, this is my first time watching this along with you as well, and I heard a little bit from a couple of news sources about that stuff before, and now they're finally talking about it out here. I'm pretty sure maybe a year ago, Pierre Poilievre was talking about the Chinese police stations. I believe there's one in London, some of these states, but other than that, I can't remember where they were. But that's good that he's mentioning that here. And if they're actually putting it into a bill, then it's going to be interesting what they say about that in Parliament.
Dictatorship register have their names publicized and exposed. Third, the United Kingdom has said that Canada is the likely spot for a terrorist attack. Now, Canada's government says that there's only a medium risk. Well, the Prime Minister said the other day that there has been a terrorist attack on our people. There was an attack there are multiple attacks against synagogues and schools in Montreal, according to the Prime Minister, while he says the risk level is only medium. We also have attacks that happened against innocent Muslims in Quebec City and in London, Ontario, and we've had churches burned down. We need to have a review of Canada's assessment of the risk of an attack in this country. Fourth, we need to remove red tape from the Security Infrastructure Program, which protects places of worship and other community centers from attacks. That means quickly approving funding to protect our people.
And that shouldn't have to be put into a bill. That should just be common sense. Hey, look, in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it says we have the right to our faith and our belief. So that should be protected against discrimination and against, hate. They shouldn't have to, that should just be common sense, not, we have to write this up, put it into a bill.
There's one mosque I visited where their people were mowed down by a car, and now by who came onto their property. They've been waiting 2 years to get protection for their place of worship, but the whole application is stuck in more red tape and bureaucracy. You want to streamline it so that all places of worship, synagogues, mosques, temples, gurdwaras, churches, can protect themselves against future attacks. And finally, we want to create a task force against anti-hate violence. that would coordinate federal intelligence and law enforcement with local police. The risk we have is that federal intelligence bureaucracies in Ottawa may be aware of a potential risk, and if they don't tell the local police of where that risk could manifest itself, the attack could happen. One has a chance to prevent it. We want one coordinated task force that will bring together law enforcement at all three levels of government to share intelligence, interrupt attacks, and protect our people. This is a common sense plan to keep all of our people safe after attacks against synagogues and schools in Montreal, against innocent Muslims in Quebec City and London, harassment of other communities of faith across this country, including burning down of churches. Enough is enough. We need a common sense government that will protect all of our people, something that our Prime Minister has failed to do after 8 long years. We live in a much more dangerous country where crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are common in our streets, where people are afraid to live. This is the necessary consequence of Justin Trudeau's bad decisions. He is not worth the crime, not worth the chaos, not worth the danger. It's time for a common sense, conservative government that will protect our people. Thank you, and I welcome your questions.
And let me just say, the burning down of churches, that's been happening since the pandemic started. So since 2019, there's been reports of the burning and desecration of churches. So what? That's 3 years already and nothing's been done about it.
We'll now have some time for questions from the floor.
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre.
Yes.
Levan from Rebel News. You mentioned certain things that rise to the level of a crime, but there are many things that aren't quite at that level.
Ezra Levat from Rebel News. Well, he's going to shoot a good question here.
For example, people marching, calling for an intifada, or using language that may not rise to the level of a criminal prosecution. And you've said before that you respect freedom of speech even for odious views. But what about people who are not Canadian citizens, who are foreign nationals, perhaps here on a student visa to go to our schools, and instead of studying at university, they're participating in these hate marches, intimidating people, Jewish restaurants, calling for the death of Jews. Again, not criminal level, but these are foreign nationals. Would you support canceling the visas and deporting foreign nationals who, instead of doing what they came here to do, are spreading hate at these pro-Hamas rallies?
Thank you for your question. You raise a number of different issues. One, if someone comes here on a student visa and they're not actually a student, then on that basis alone, they should go home. We don't want to have, one of the problems we have with the student visa program is that it has been used as a fraudulent point of entry, particularly for corrupt employers trying to get labor from abroad. So in general, we believe that we should shut down all the fraud in the student visa program, and anyone who claims to come here to study that is not actually studying should not be here. With regards to protests, I do believe in freedom of speech. I believe people should be allowed to say things I disagree with, even things that I find appalling. That is the price of living in a free country. The alternative is to have state censors who then decide what kind of speech is acceptable and what is not, and then who chooses those state censors. And then those censors will pick and choose based on their own political views which speech is allowed and which speech is not. That's why I believe in freedom of expression. You mentioned, for example, if someone stands up and calls for violence against a particular group, they can, under the current criminal code, be charged with incitement. Those provisions already exist. And I would encourage law enforcement to make sure those provisions are upheld for any and all people who deliberately incite violence against an identifiable group, because that has been criminalized for many years. And anyone who is convicted of that, who is not a citizen, should obviously not be in Canada.
That was a really, really good and interesting question. I was kind of I was interested in how Pierre Poilievre was going to pick that thing apart, and it was pretty smart how he separated it out into sections. So he's right that there's already a law into about hate about different groups. I remember, I believe Trudeau brought that in something like 2018. And I think we'll leave that there for tonight. Pretty good answers there from Pierre Poilievre. Anywho, if you guys could like, subscribe, and comment on the down below, that would be awesome. And anything we could chat about, that'll be great. And good night, everybody.